What is the health of an economy measured by? For many, the answer to this question lies in a single acronym, GDP, or Gross Domestic Product. So, what is GDP? It is the total value of all final goods and services produced within a country over a specific period. It's like a snapshot of an economy's performance, often taken quarterly or annually. There are four key components that make up GDP. First, we have consumption. This is the money that households spend on goods and services. So every time you buy groceries or pay for a haircut, you're contributing to the country's GDP. Second is investment. This represents the money businesses spend on capital goods like buildings and equipment. When a company builds a new factory or upgrades its machinery, that's investment. Third, we have government spending. This is the money that the government spends on goods and services. From road construction to public education, all of these expenditures are part of the GDP. Lastly, we have net exports. This is the difference between what a country sells to other countries, exports, and what it buys from them, imports. If a country exports more than it imports, it has a positive net export adding to the GDP. If it imports more than it exports, the net export is negative, reducing the GDP. Now, one thing to note is that GDP can be expressed in two ways, nominal and real. Nominal GDP measures the value of goods and services in current prices, while real GDP does so in constant prices, removing the effects of inflation. Thus, real GDP gives a more accurate picture of an economy's growth. Why is GDP so important? Primarily, GDP is a measure of the size and health of an economy. Large GDPs usually point to strong economies, while smaller GDPs signal weaker ones. It's a tool that governments, businesses, and economists use to track economic performance and make policy decisions. GDP also helps to assess economic growth. When GDP grows, the economy is expanding. If it declines, the economy is contracting. Furthermore, GDP is a measure of economic well-being. It can be used to gauge the overall standard of living in a country. Lastly, GDP can be used to assess economic efficiency, showing how effectively an economy is using its resources. Despite its importance, GDP has its limitations. GDP doesn't consider income distribution, so it doesn't show how evenly wealth is spread within an economy. It also doesn't account for environmental costs. The damage caused by economic activity isn't subtracted from GDP. Lastly, GDP doesn't measure non-market goods and services. If a good or service isn't traded in the market, it doesn't contribute to GDP, even if it has value. So, while GDP is a valuable tool for measuring an economy's overall size and health, it's essential to be aware of these limitations when interpreting GDP data. It's part of the bigger picture, but not the entire story.